Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys are ready to jump into some more tips and tricks. This one really isn't, I guess, as many tips and tricks. Mainly it's just tip part. Okay, that sounds really bad, but what I'm trying to get at is that I'm just going to be going over one thing in this video. It is going to be another pros and cons video, except I'm not going to do like I did before and have them listed out. I feel like that was something I did enjoy in the first one, but I think I want to try to move into something that's not so like presentation, you know what I mean? Like I'm doing a freaking PowerPoint up here. But this video, we're going to be going over crew slots, because I see a lot of people in games that, or even people that join and stream, that don't have all the crew slots that they should, I think, have. Not everyone needs to have them, but I think if you're playing ground, even naval, you should definitely have them. For air, it's definitely a lot less necessary, but we'll get into that later in the video. But I hope you guys are ready. This is going to be something I think every single player can make use out of, even if, again, you're new or you're an old player. Either way, crew slots are something that's very crucial in this game. So if you don't know about crew slots, we're gonna go over them in this video and do some pros and cons. So I hope you're ready. Stay tuned. Let's get it going, baby. Yeah! Okay, so the first things that we're gonna be going over is the pros in this video. We're gonna get the good news out of the way first, and then we'll go over the bad news after. I came up with 7 reasons for pros and for cons, so we're gonna go piece by piece here. The first reason I think that getting extra crew slots is very helpful is because you can have more vehicles in battle. You can bring not only more tanks, but you can bring more planes or even helicopters into a match, which not only increase your survivability, but your flexibility. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to play a certain vehicle in a certain lineup. If you play 8-3 a lot, or 7-7 or 6-7, you can have a lineup for each one of these. And if you guys, obviously you do know that every BR, there's multiple tanks at multiple given BRs. Some of them have less than others, but at certain BRs, you could have at least 5 to 8 tanks or even planes in that lineup. So that way, if you get a certain map that's better for brawling, you can play your heavy tanks. If you get a map that's better for sniping, you can get your light tanks and flank around, or things like that. So that way, no matter what map you're playing, you always have something that's going to be viable for that map. So that way you don't get an IS-4M and then you play European Province, the big fat map, because what are you gonna do there? Nothing. You'll die is what you'll do. The next thing is less waiting time, because if you have more crews, that means you don't have to wait as long if one of your vehicles is destroyed. You can just switch to another one and get right back into the match. If you have less vehicles in your lineup, that means you're going to be quicker to get out of the game, which means if you die, you have to be either a lot more sparing with your vehicle, or again, you're already banished to playing anti-air for the rest of the game, and then you just have to sit there and wait for planes because you don't want to leave spawn, because if you do, you'll probably blow up. So you kind of just got to sit there, play anti-air, and just suck it up. But if you have more vehicles in your lineup, then you don't have to worry about playing anti-air as soon, or a vehicle that you don't really want to play. You'll have a few other backup options, so that way if you die a lot sooner than you had planned to, you have other options, excluding backups from this. We're not worried about backups because I know you can just respawn in the same tank. But if you die in that one tank and you don't have backups for whatever reason that you don't, you can just play something else and you'll be okay. Now the next pro that we're going to talk about for getting more crew slots is that you can have better lineup variety, which kind of goes in the same area as more vehicles in battle, but that one is more of just having a general more planes, more tanks, like the more the merrier type thing. Not really in regards to this point where it's you can have a more diverse selection of vehicles and you can counter different threats, so that way you're not always having to play the same role over and over again. That does kind of fall into survivability and flexibility, mainly just a flexibility part, but having variety in your lineup definitely is a good thing, because say you're playing with your friend that likes playing heavy tanks. Okay, you can play a light tank and try to help scout for him, or you can play a plane to try to fly around. You can have more planes in your lineup that maybe aren't meant for cast, but meant for anti-cast, or meant to just strafe things to mark them for your team. Or you can have more anti-air if your teammates, better than you, which usually that's how it is for me, even though I don't bring a lot of anti-air. But you can try to keep the planes out of the sky to help your better teammate or other teammates push up forward so they can cap points without getting blown up from 5 miles into space. So really it's up to you in regards to what vehicles you want to be flexible with or have in regards to the variety, but it's really good to have as as many crew slots as you want, so that way you don't have to worry about, oh crap, now I can only bring one vehicle of each type, or even, you know, one heavy tank, one light tank, one plane, and or anti-air in there, whatever you want to do. So it's such a good thing to have variety over kind of feeling like you're pressured to only have one tank of each type. Now the next thing is that you can have more efficient crew training. You have more crew slots since you have more crew slots, which means you can train more crews simultaneously, which improves your options in the long run. So instead of having to have only 4 or 5, you know, crew slots that are available to you, or 3 to 5, you can have 7 to 8, 8 to 10. That way you can have so many different crew slots that are available, so you can always move things in and out of your lineup, and you can have all of them as, you know, high of levels that you wanted, even expert or aced. Because if you can have 10 vehicles and they're all aced, which I don't even know how you would do that, but you definitely could do it, that would be the most insane thing ever. Like, you'd have fast repair times, fast rearming times, your crew would just, your driving would be better, everything would be the max that it could be, no matter what. So being able to spread that out amongst a bunch of crews rather than just having like 3 or 4 of them done is a great thing to do. So if you can get more crew slots and maximize them to max level or expert or ace, that is definitely something you should strive for. Now, the next point is going to be obvious. Increase your efficiency in grinding. I know you guys play this game a lot, just as I do. You want to make as much money and as much RP as you can in every single game. Make every second count. So if you have more crew slots, you can stay in the battle longer. You'll get more SL and you get more RP. So that means you'll also get more use of that booster that you just got. That 500% booster that you got that's ruining your match, don't worry. You can enjoy it longer now because you have more crew slots. So it's really just, in all honesty, that is probably one of my biggest pros, like personally, because when you have, say, a bunch of premium vehicles, or even if you don't have a bunch of premium vehicles, if you have an RP booster on or an SL booster on, staying in that game as long as you can to earn as much points as possible is the best way to quickly go through a nation or to quickly make some money, so that way you can level things up or you can buy new vehicles and stuff like that, because the longer you are in one game, the more points you get. Now, there are some boosters that last for a few games, but still, you want to make sure you're in the game for as long as possible, capping as many points, getting as many assists, things like that. That way you maximize the use of that booster, but you can continue to spawn in over and over and over again because you have more vehicles that you can spawn in because you have more crew slots. Now, the next one is also pretty obvious, that the more vehicles you have, the more crew slots, the more useful it is to grind events and challenges. Having multiple crews makes it so much easier to fly through grinding an event challenge or a battle pass challenge, because if you guys are aware, when there's like a ground challenge or an air challenge, you have to get, or even for boats, it's really for every single vehicle, if you want to get the coupon, you have to get a certain amount of score to earn it. Or even if you're just doing the, I want to just do the day to get the star and that's it, it's about 35,000 to 45,000 score to get it done. Again, I guess not really air, because air you only have one life unless you're playing sim, but sim is kind of, I feel like, a higher skill bracket, so we're not really going to talk about that because I don't really play sim too much. But for ground, if you have 10 vehicles in your lineup, that's going to make it to where you can earn more score per game. So instead of having 3 or 4 vehicles and only earning, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 per game, you can have 10 vehicles and earn 5,000 score. Now that's definitely on the higher end. I'd probably say even 3,000 is on the higher end, really, depending on how good you are. So like, instead of earning, you know, 1,000 score or 1,500 score, you can probably double that and earn like 3,000 because you have more vehicles, which again, in turn means for that 35,000 you have to get for that vehicle for that day, you can get that done a lot quicker because you're spending more time in game getting more points per game instead of having to leave, join, because you keep running out of vehicles so fast. So having more crew slots is very, very good for when events pop up. Now, this event that we're having right now with the Great War doesn't really count because that one, you don't get to choose. It is the April Fool's event, so it doesn't really count. We're talking about vehicle events where you have to earn the stars by playing the normal matches. So exclude the Great War. That one's not what we're talking about. Now, the last pro that I'm going to mention is that you have flexibility across modes. Whether it's arcade or realistic or simulator battles, more crews allow you to tailor lineups for different play styles. So if you want, say you only play freaking 5-7 and you want to have 7 5-7 lineups, you can do that and have 7 different 5-7 lineups with all your different crew slots in different spots if you'd like to. And me personally, I have a lineup for every like big BR jump for me, like every one BR. Like I have one for 4-7, 5-7, 6-7, 7-7, 8-3, 8-7, things like that. That way I can have a lineup for every nation, and then I try to have as many crew slots as I can per lineup. That way I can play everything across the board. For air, it's a little bit different because air realistic, you only have one vehicle anyways, but you still could have an entire lineup of air and then just have different things in a lineup if you want. You just have to be careful because again, if you spawn in air realistic, you're only gonna be able to use one plane that you spawn spawned in. But if you're doing Air Simulator, I'm sure you're aware that there's like that 1 BR range, like 7.0 to 8.0. So you can bring in a few planes in that range. And if you have 10 slots and you have 10 different planes you could bring potentially that are in that, if you can find 10 planes in that 1 BR for that one nation. But for ground, it's mainly what we're talking about because that's what I play, and I think most people would play that. End of the day, more vehicles, better for you, more flexible across all the game modes, because if you're playing arcade, realistic, or sim, you have more play styles you can work with, more flexibility you can work with, more vehicles you can work with, and more breathing room, because you're not like, crap, I just lost my tank, now I only have 1 more. Now it's, crap, I lost my tank, I only have 9 more. So it's really just personal preference, but I would say that it's definitely good to have more vehicles than not when you're trying to do any game mode, because the more lives you can throw towards your team to winning is the better. All right, now that we've gone over all the pros, which is again 7 of them, we are now going to go over the cons, which is, if you don't know, the bad things, which I'm sure you guys know that, but just in case you don't, you never know, that's the bad things, and we're going to go over 7 of them as well. I want to keep them even, so that way it's not like I'm trying to sway you in one way or the other, even though it may sound like I'm swaying you in one way or the other. I promise you that I'm not. I might be. But again, 7 cons, let's get into it. All right, so the first con that we're going to discuss is that there is a high cost in Golden Eagles to get extra crew slots. Every time you buy another crew slot, it increases in price in Golden Eagles. So you have to be very careful because it does cost real money to get more crew slots. So if you see someone that has 10 crew slots, they pay GE for each and every one of them. So it definitely isn't something that, if you're a free-to-play player, something that you'd really want to look into. I still think it's very worth the money, even if you don't use premium vehicles or premium time. I think having more tanks in battle is definitely something you should do. But again, since it does cost real money, that does put some people off of the idea. But I still think if you're thinking of things you should spend your money on this game, buying extra crew slots, even if it's just 1 or 2, is definitely a very helpful and good idea that will bring a lot of good rewards your way, in my opinion. Now, the second thing is that when using crew slots, there's additional crew training costs. So every single time you buy a new crew slot, your crew for that slot is then reduced to 0. Not really reduced, because it was never anything anyways. It's like you just hired somebody and now you have to train them to do the job. So you can have a really high level crew, even if it's aced or, you know, an expert crew on one slot, but you buy a new one, now that goes back down to level 1. So you have to start from scratch with your repair costs, your weapon maintenance, if it's a plane, your G tolerance, your stamina, things of that nature. So yes, it's nice to have a new crew, but it can be a very huge hassle or thing to get used to when you have a high level crew and then you die and have to use your low level crew, and then you have to freaking deal with goobers that don't know how to repair a track and it takes 50 seconds when your other crew knows what they're doing and it takes them 15 seconds. So that's something that you have to keep in mind when getting a new one, is that you have to start pretty much from scratch with guiding your crew on how to be a crew. Which I don't know how they became a crew in the first place, because how are they in a tank? Who hired them if they don't know what they're doing? But that's besides the point. Now, the third reason or third con is that you don't always need to have extra crew slots. If you're at your BR, you usually don't have more of a SP tax. If you get a full up tier or a full down tier, that can impact how much it costs to spawn in. So if you're in a full up tier and you have a bunch of crew slots, I mean, you could spawn in 10 times and you'll still be fine. But if you're in a full down tier, even if you have 3 crew slots, as soon as you die one time, it's gonna cost you like an arm and a leg in your firstborn kid to spawn back in. So it's always something that you have to be careful of. When you're at the lower BRs, you don't really need to have a bunch of crew. Now you can, but when you're at a lower BR, it's not really necessary to have as many, because you're still trying to learn the game. So you don't have to really worry about having them at a lower BR. I still think you could get them if you wanted to, but you need to focus on really learning the game. I guess if you have more tanks, you could learn the game faster, but you get my point. If you're at a lower BR, you're more focused on trying to figure out the ropes of the game than you are of trying to have 10 tanks in your lineup. But I still think it's something you should do. Now, the fourth con is that some nations don't need it or don't have it. Certain nations at certain BRs have literally ghost town of a lineup. That goes for air or ground. Boats is kind of like, it's boats. But for ground and air, I'm sure we can all name at least 3 BRs where there's 2 things you can use at that lineup, or 3 things where it's really like a plane, a tank, and that's it in your lineup. Like there's just certain BRs in certain nations where they don't have an SPAA, or they have big jumps, or they just only have a few things at that BR, which definitely sucks. But that's something you have to keep in mind. If you have extra crew slots and there's nothing at the BR you're playing, you may be forced to either up tier yourself so you can have more vehicles, or you're gonna have to bring lower BR vehicles into into that lineup so that way you can fill out all the crew slots. Now, just because you have the crew slots there doesn't mean you have to use them, but you might as well since it's there. Now, the fifth con is that there's higher repair costs. If you have more vehicles in the match, that means you're going to be paying more to repair vehicles if you're losing multiple of them per match. Now, it's not really that much. I feel like it's not the hardest to have enough SL in your account to get the repair cost, but some people I've seen go negative. Some people I've seen have 1,000 SL. So you really have to be careful, because if you have multiple vehicles but you can't pay to repair multiple vehicles, you will go in debt really fast, and that is not a good thing, because the more vehicles you can't repair, the more vehicles you cannot play. So while you do have more vehicles, make sure that you have enough SL to play said vehicles, so that way you don't have to worry about paying the repair costs for them, because if you have a lot of SL and you save up, repair costs really, you can just throw it on automatic repair costs and replenish costs and you'll be fine. But just be careful about that when playing, because I know when the crate season comes around, everybody's scrounging, so be very careful about that. Now, the sixth con is that your crew XP will be spread thin. If you have a lot of crews, your experience points will be spread out between all of them. So it's going to make it a lot harder to ace a crew or expert a crew if you're playing a bunch of different vehicles, because you're never focusing on the same crew. So you're going to be kind of putting all of your eggs in different baskets instead of putting all of them in one. While it is more of a long run investment, because if you're training 10 of your crews and someone's training 5, sure, they may ace theirs sooner, but in the long run, you'll have more than them aced in that regard. So it's just something you have to keep in mind, because you're going to be playing so many different vehicles and so many different slots that all of your crew XP is going to be going to all the separate ones rather than going to the same ones every single match, because you have more vehicles and more slots that you need to play to get trained. Now, the seventh and last con is that there is no refund or transfer once you buy an extra crew slot. Once you buy a crew slot for a nation, you cannot transfer it to another nation, nor can you get a refund. So once you buy a crew slot for that nation, it is a permanent choice. And I myself have bought a crew slot for a nation that I did not mean to buy it for, and I just had an extra crew slot. So of course I made use of it, but that's what really sucks. There's not like a 5-second, are you sure? There's not a, would you like to change it? No, as soon as you buy a crew slot for that nation, it's stuck. So if you accidentally buy one and you only have a certain amount of GE and you can't get more, unfortunately, you're cooked. You have to just deal with it. So make sure that you're on the right nation. That way, when you buy it, you have the right thing. Because again, I myself have bought a crew slot for, I'm pretty sure it was like Russia or something, and I meant to buy it for another nation. It may sound stupid, but I promise you it'll happen, and when you do, you'll facepalm yourself, because you don't know how it could have been, it could have came to be. But again, just be super careful, because there's no refund, no transfer. Once you buy it, that's it. It's set in stone. All right, with all the cons and the pros went over, that pretty much wraps up this video. I did plan to have this under 10 minutes, but it went a little over, so I hope you guys can forgive me for that. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's anything that you want to make me aware of, or anyone that's watched this video aware of, please drop in the comments. We'd love to see what you got to say. I know that me personally, I'm leaning towards more getting the crew slots, but it's to each their own, as we go over in every single video. If you play the game a lot more often than others, you're probably going to lean more towards getting crew slots. If you don't play as much as other people, you're probably leaning towards not getting it. It's really personal preference, and there's not a right or wrong choice. It depends on how you want to spend your money on the game that you play. If you play air, you might not get them. If you play sim air, you might get them. So it really doesn't matter. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to or you don't have to. It's up to you. That's why I like making these videos, so that way I can give you both sides of the spectrum. You can figure out yourself, do I want it or do I not want it? And there's plenty of other things that you could also probably discuss, but I try to make it short and sweet, so that way I don't give you 50 cons and 50 pros and you're like, all right, now figure it out. I know 7 still may be a lot, but I try to make it as even and balanced as I can. That way it's not too much or it's not too little, but it gives you a good idea of the highs and lows of each idea, so that way you can really weigh your options on what you want to do. But again, you want to grind, get more crew slots. You don't really care about grinding, you kind of like chilling in the back and just hopping on every now and again, then you don't have to, but you can still do both or neither. It's up to you. But I love you guys so very much. Hope y'all enjoyed this video. Sorry you probably just heard my hand slap. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a blessed one, stay safe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace. Join the Discord room, it's at 500 members.